Hi, I'm Layla. The moment my mom called me a failure, something inside me went silent. It wasn't a loud, crashing silence, like a door slamming shut. It was the quiet kind that creeps in and takes over, a slow erasing of sound, of self, of everything that once felt warm. I remember staring at her that day, just watching her mouth move, her face stiff and tight like she had rehearsed it. She didn't even raise her voice. That's what hurt more. She said it like a fact, like she was telling me the sky was blue or water was wet. I think she wanted it to sting without looking cruel. But cruelty isn't always in the volume. Sometimes it's in the way someone stops seeing you. I had just come back from another job interview, the sixth one that month. I was wearing the same black blazer I had worn to all of them, the one with a slightly fraying inside, seam I tried not to think about. My shoes were scuffed. My resume, folded in my bag, was starting to feel like a list of lies. And my mother had been waiting, standing at the kitchen counter with her arms folded, like a judge waiting for a verdict she already knew.
She didn't ask how it went.
She didn't ask if I was okay. She just said, "You've had your chances, Layla. At some point you have to face it. You're just not going to make it." And then she looked away, like it wasn't worth dragging the conversation any further. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I walked up to my room and closed the door behind me, not gently, but not loud enough to get her attention either. That had been the pattern for years. I would try, I would fail, she would sigh, and I would shrink. Then the silence would come, stretching between us like plastic wrap, see-through but suffocating. I wasn't surprised she said it. What surprised me was how much it still hurt, even after all this time. Even after growing up being the backup child, the one who didn't win awards, didn't bring home trophies, didn't know how to be useful the way my sister Marla was. Marla, who was always 5 steps ahead. Marla, the doctor. Marla, the shining one. The funny thing is, I never hated Marla. I envied her, yes, and sometimes I avoided her just to keep from comparing myself to the life she lived, but deep down, I was proud of her. I just wished, maybe once, someone had been proud of me too. Not proud of me for surviving, for scraping together hope when there was none left, but proud of something I actually built. I wanted to be good at something, not just good at pretending I was okay. That night, I sat on my bed with the lights off, scrolling through photos on my phone like they were windows to a better life. There were a few selfies with forced smiles, a bunch of food pictures I never posted, and one old shot from college, me standing in front of an art installation I had helped build. My shirt was covered in paint. My cheeks were sunburned, and I was smiling like I belonged there. That photo hurt more than anything else, because it reminded me of the version of me I used to believe in. The one who thought creating something beautiful could matter. Before rent, before rejections, before my mom looked at me like I was some kind of burden she couldn't return. The next day, I didn't get out of bed. I didn't brush my teeth or check my email or open any job portals. I just lay there, eyes open, feeling the weight of invisibility. My phone buzzed once, an email notification. A rejection. Again. I didn't even click on it. I just turned the screen face down and stared at the ceiling, counting the little glow-in-the-dark stars I had stuck there when I was 16. Back when I thought dreams were real things, not just decorations. It stayed like that for a few days. The house was quiet. My mom didn't come upstairs. She had made it a habit to go silent when she was disappointed in me, which meant the silence was pretty constant. I only got up to make instant noodles or steal crackers from the pantry. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't answer texts. I just faded. Quietly. Then one night, something strange happened. I got an email from a name I didn't recognize. It wasn't spam. It had no links or offers. Just a message that read, "Saw your old sketchbook. Still powerful stuff. Are you still creating?" My heart skipped. Not from joy. From confusion. Who is this? What sketchbook? And how did they find it? I reread the email 10 times.
No signature. No clue.
Just a flicker of light in a long tunnel. The only thing I could think of was a college project I had uploaded years ago to a forgotten portfolio site. Back when I thought being an artist was a real path. I hadn't logged into that site in forever. But I did now. The password came back slowly, like a song I hadn't heard in years. When I finally got in, I saw something I didn't expect. My profile had views. Thousands of them. Comments, too. People had been finding my work. People had been sharing it. And I hadn't even known. My hands shook as I clicked through the sketches. They were raw, unpolished, but they had heart. One of them, a black and white drawing of a girl with wires instead of veins, had been shared over 800 times. Someone had even written, "This piece saved me." I stared at the screen, not blinking. It felt like someone had opened a window in a room I forgot had air. My mom had called me a failure, but strangers were calling me an artist. And I didn't know who to believe. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was sad, but because something was waking up inside me. A quiet restlessness I hadn't felt in years. Like my hands were hungry for more than scrolling. Like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as invisible as she made me feel. The next morning, I pulled out my old sketchpad. The one with bent corners and smudged pages. I stared at the blank sheet for a long time. Then I drew. Not well. Not brilliantly. But honestly, I drew until my wrist ached. Until my fingers smudged everything. Until I stopped thinking about failure and just moved. Days passed. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I just kept drawing. Uploading pieces to that same site. Writing little captions, sometimes poetic, sometimes angry. I didn't look for validation.
But it came anyway.
Slowly. Quietly. Like a tide that didn't crash, just crept closer each day. One morning, I got another email. A woman named Jen from a small digital magazine asked if she could feature one of my pieces. I thought it was a scam at first, but it wasn't. A week later, my drawing of the girl with wires instead of veins was on their front page with the headline, "The Art of Quiet Pain." My name was below it. Not my username. My real name. I didn't show my mom. I knew what she'd say. That it wasn't a real job. That art was a hobby. That I needed to stop wasting time. So I didn't give her the chance. I just kept working. By now, I had a small following. People sent messages. Some asked for commissions. Some just said thank you. Every message felt like a brick in a wall I was building between her words and my self-worth. Then one evening, while I was cleaning out an old drawer, I found something unexpected, an envelope addressed to me, postmarked 3 years ago. It was from a professor I barely remembered. I opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten, praising a piece I had submitted in class. He called it haunting and unforgettable. He said I had a voice that deserved to be heard. I stared at the ink, faded slightly, but still clear. I had never read this letter. My mom had never given it to me. Had she hidden it, forgotten it, or just thrown it in the drawer with everything else she didn't understand? It didn't matter. Not anymore. Because for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to her. I just had to prove something to myself. And that meant continuing. Even when it was quiet. Even when it was slow. I didn't know then that a storm was coming. That a message from a stranger would change everything. That a twist was waiting just around the corner. But I could feel the wind shifting. Like the universe had finally noticed me. And it was whispering, "Keep going." I didn't know the message would come in the middle of a rainy Tuesday, just after I had burned my toast and spilled coffee down the front of my only clean hoodie. I was sitting on the floor, sketching with my legs crossed, a playlist humming in the background, when my email pinged again. At first, I thought it was just another commission request, or maybe someone commenting on a recent post. But this subject line froze me in place. Proposal for collaboration, Times Square campaign. I blinked. Read it again. Then opened it slowly, like it might explode if I moved too fast. The email was from someone named Adrian. He introduced himself as a creative lead at a branding agency based in New York. Apparently, one of his interns had found my art online and shared it in a pitch meeting. They were launching a mental health awareness campaign across major digital platforms, and they wanted my piece. Not just to feature it in a blog. Not just to repost it on a social media story. They wanted to buy the licensing rights, animate it, and, his words, not mine, bring it to life on the Times Square digital display wall as the centerpiece of the launch. I stared at the screen like it was lying to me. My first thought wasn't excitement. It was disbelief. This had to be a scam. I even Googled the agency, searched the name, checked for typos. But everything checked out. The email was real. The offer was real. I read it 10 more times before the words finally sank in. They wanted my art. In Times Square. A second later, my breath caught. I hadn't even told my mom I was drawing again. I hadn't told her about the magazine feature, or the commissions, or the comments from strangers who said my work made them feel less alone. To her, I was still upstairs in my childhood bedroom, wasting time between job rejections. And maybe a part of me liked keeping it that way. Maybe I liked the idea of building something quietly, away from her judgment. But this wasn't going to stay quiet for long. The agency scheduled a video call. I cleaned my room, propped my sketchbook against the window for soft light, and wore a sweater that didn't have any holes. Adrian turned out to be kind, curious, and full of vision. He talked about blending art with emotion, visibility with vulnerability. He said my work captured something that felt real. He used words like impactful and raw. Then he offered to fly me to New York for the launch. All expenses paid. They wanted me to be there when the campaign dropped. I nodded, my voice shaking as I said yes. The next week moved like a dream. I updated my portfolio, signed the contract, and sent over high-res scans of my artwork. I even recorded a short video about the inspiration behind it, how it came from feeling invisible, how it helped me climb out of a place I didn't know how to explain. They asked for nothing more than honesty. And for once, I had something honest to give. I didn't tell my mom I was going. I packed my bag in silence, left a note on the kitchen counter that said, "Gone for a few days.
Don't worry."
I didn't expect her to notice. She barely looked up from her phone when I passed through the living room that morning. She thought I was going to another interview, another pointless step in the long staircase to nowhere. And I let her think that. Let her sit there with her folded arms and quiet judgments. The flight was short, but my heart pounded the whole way. I didn't sleep. Just stared out the window as the clouds shifted and thinned, like curtains pulling back. When I landed, someone was waiting with a sign that had my name on it. That was the first time I cried. Quietly in the back seat of the car, behind sunglasses. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in forever, I felt like someone was expecting me. The hotel was too nice. The room was too big. I felt like I didn't belong. But Adrian had told me that was normal. That imposter syndrome follows the best of us into our biggest moments. Let it walk beside you, he had said on the call. But don't let it hold the pen. On the day of the launch, I was dressed in black jeans, a fitted coat, and the sneakers I had saved up for months ago. Ones I never thought I'd wear anywhere important. The agency team met me outside the building. Cameras were set up. People buzzed like bees, focused and fast. Someone handed me a coffee and said, "It's time." We walked to the corner of 45th and Broadway.
My heart was a drum in my chest.
And then it happened. My drawing, the one of the girl with wires instead of veins, her heart glowing faintly under her ribcage, appeared on the largest screen I had ever seen. It moved. The animation was soft, slow, pulsing. Underneath it, my name, in big, white letters. Layla Amin, artist. It didn't feel real. People stopped to watch. Some took pictures. A few clapped. One person, a woman holding a toddler, touched her chest and whispered something. Maybe she saw herself in that girl. Maybe she saw someone she loved. I didn't know.
But I saw me.
For the first time in a long time, I saw myself. The agency asked to film a short reaction clip. I stood in front of the billboard and talked about invisibility, about pain that goes unnamed, about turning quiet into art. I didn't cry. I smiled. A small one. But it was real. That night, I posted the video on my old Instagram. Not the one I used for art, but the personal one. The one my mom followed. I didn't write a caption. Just let the video speak for itself. The next morning, my phone exploded. Messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. College friends, classmates, even old teachers. But the one that stood out was from my mom. Just one sentence. Is this real? I didn't reply right away. I let it sit there. I wanted her to sit with it, like I had sat with her silence all those years. Then I typed back, "It's always been real. You just didn't look."
She didn't respond. Not for a day.
Not for two. And I didn't expect her to. But on the third day, she called. I didn't pick up. Let it ring. Let her feel what I had felt: uncertainty, distance, the ache of being too late. But then a text. "Your father saw the billboard. He cried." I stared at it. My dad, and I never talked much. He was always in the background, quiet, working, distant. But I remembered something. When I was a kid, he used to call me his little drawer. Not daughter.
Drawer.
Because I drew on everything. Napkins, walls, receipts. I hadn't thought of that in years. Another ping. A photo. My parents standing under the billboard. My mom holding her coat closed with one hand. My dad looking straight up. No words. Just the image. I sat down on the edge of the bed and let the air fill my lungs slowly. This wasn't a fairy tale. She hadn't apologized. She hadn't said she was wrong.
But she came.
She looked. Maybe for the first time, she really saw me. Not as a failure, but as someone who survived her doubt. I didn't reply to the photo. Not yet. Because my story wasn't done. The billboard was just the start. Something else was beginning. A gallery reached out the next week. A public school wanted prints for their wellness initiative. A podcast invited me to speak. For once, I wasn't chasing. People were coming to me. But even in the noise, I stayed grounded. I still drew in silence. Still made tea late at night. Still stared at my old sketchbooks like they held my real self. And maybe that was the twist no one saw coming. That after all the noise and lights and claps, the thing that saved me was never the billboard. It was the moment I stopped needing permission to be seen. The gallery invitation wasn't just a line in an email. It was a full-color PDF with my name at the top, surrounded by words like solo exhibition and emerging voice in emotional realism. I reread it 3 times before it sank in. They weren't asking me to submit art. They were offering me an entire wall. Mine. A curated show of my work. They had seen the billboard, read the campaign article, and traced the art back to me. They wanted more. I had always thought of galleries as impossible places. Clean white walls, wine glasses, people who speak in abstract words I never understood. But now they were reaching out. And I couldn't ignore the shift happening around me. Still, I hesitated. It's strange how success doesn't always erase fear. Sometimes it sharpens it. Because now there was more to lose. More people watching. More versions of me floating around, open to judgment. And deep inside, a voice still whispered, "What if they find out you're not enough? That the billboard was a fluke?" But I had learned by now that doubt doesn't leave. You just learn to walk past it. So I said yes. The gallery set a date for the show, 6 weeks away. They asked me to submit 10 pieces, all new if possible. I looked around my room. The walls were bare. My desk cluttered with empty mugs, torn sketches, half-finished thoughts on paper. I had no roadmap. Just a window, a heartbeat, and my own scars to guide me. The first piece came easily. A girl standing on the edge of a rooftop, holding a glowing rope tied to nothing. I called it still holding. The second was harder. Then the third broke me. It was the first time I tried to draw my mom. Not her face exactly, but her absence. A kitchen table with one chair missing. A phone on silent. A shadow in the shape of a sentence. "You're just not going to make it." I didn't show it to anyone. But I finished it. Around week 4, the messages started again. My mom texted, "Let's talk." Then, "We should catch up." Then, "Are you still mad at me?" I read them, each one like a knock on a locked door. But I didn't open it. Not yet. I wasn't mad. I was just still healing. There's a difference. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. My sister Marla showed up. Not with a call or a warning, but in person. She knocked on my apartment door one rainy Friday, wearing a trench coat and holding a soaked paper bag filled with groceries. She smiled the way you smile when you're not sure you're welcome. I hadn't seen her in almost a year. Not since she moved states for her residency and left behind a family she never liked talking about. She had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. But even gold rusts under enough pressure. She stepped inside without asking and set the bag on my counter. I didn't speak. I waited. She poured us both tea and finally said, "Mom told me about the billboard." She's shaken. I raised an eyebrow, still silent. She didn't know how far she pushed you. I mean, we all saw it, Layla.
But we didn't say anything.
I didn't say anything. And I'm sorry. That word, sorry, hit strange. I had never heard it from Marla. Not once. She sipped her tea like it was a truth serum. Then she looked up.
I saw your video, she said.
The one about invisibility. I cried. Not because of you, because of me. Because I let it happen.
I didn't know what to say. So I didn't say anything.
She stood to leave. I brought groceries, she said. Because I don't know how to make things right, but I wanted to bring something that fed you, not drained you. And then she left. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of guilt, but because of something softer. Like the first sign of a thaw. Maybe Marla wasn't the enemy I thought she was. Maybe she was just another survivor of silence, shaped differently by it. 3 days before the gallery show, I got a letter in the mail. Not a text, not an email. A real letter. My name handwritten across the envelope. Inside was a card, plain and unassuming. The handwriting was stiff, careful. It was from my mom. It was from my mom. She wrote that she had watched the billboard video 23 times. She wrote that when she saw my name, her stomach dropped, not from shame, but from the weight of realizing she had stopped using it with pride a long time ago. She didn't ask me to forgive her. She didn't ask me to forget. She just wrote, "I think I confused structure with support. I thought silence would keep you strong. I didn't realize it was erasing you." There was a photo folded inside. Me at age 7, holding a crayon drawing. A girl on a stage, with her hands in the air. My mom had written one thing on the back. "You always wanted the world to see you." I just wish I had looked first. I didn't cry, but something loosened inside me. A knot that had been there for years, too old to name. The night of the gallery arrived. I wore a simple dress. Black, sharp lines, no frills. I stood in the middle of the room as people walked by my work, reading the titles, tilting their heads, pausing longer than I expected. They didn't just look.
They saw.
That mattered. Then I noticed her.
My mom.
Standing at the edge of the gallery, next to Marla. Her hands were clasped tight against her stomach. She looked like she was trying to breathe through glass. She didn't approach. Just stood there, staring at the third piece, the one with the missing chair.
He walked over slowly.
Not to confront. Just to be present.
She didn't look at me.
She just whispered, "That's me, isn't it?" I nodded. She didn't say anything else. She didn't have to. We stood in silence. This time it wasn't cold. It was a pause between two people rewriting the same story. After that night, things didn't magically fix. My mom didn't become soft overnight. Marla didn't start texting every morning. But there was a crack in the wall now. A place where light could get in. I moved to New York 2 months later. The agency offered me a long-term contract as a creative consultant. I found a small apartment with a leaky faucet and a view of a fire escape. I didn't mind. It was mine. One afternoon, walking past Times Square, I stopped and looked up. The billboard had changed, of course. Some ad for a watch brand now. But I smiled anyway, because I remembered what had been there, what had started it all. A girl with wires instead of veins. A story told in lines and silence. And a name the world finally saw. Living in New York was never easy, but it taught me how to breathe again. There's something strange about building a new life in a place that doesn't care who you were before. The city doesn't ask for your resume, it just watches how you move through it. And for someone like me, who had spent years walking on eggshells. The cracked sidewalks felt like freedom. My apartment was small, loud, and always one fuse away from darkness, but it was mine. I hung my art on the walls like armor. I bought a second-hand easel and placed it by the window. I painted late into the night, the hum of traffic and sirens below like a distant heartbeat. Every piece I made now wasn't for approval. It was for truth. The agency work picked up. Adrian introduced me to more creatives, more projects, more brands looking for something raw. And while I didn't say it aloud, I always smiled quietly when they called it that. Because I had spent years thinking my pain made me weak. Now, people were saying it gave my work strength. Then came another twist.
One I didn't expect.
A major fashion brand reached out. They wanted a limited edition clothing line featuring my art. Not just on t-shirts, but coats, bags, scarves. Emotional expression through wearable design. They had a campaign in mind. A theme, unseen, unbroken. And they wanted me to be the face of it. I laughed when I first read the proposal.
Me?
The face of anything? I had spent most of my life trying to stay out of pictures to take up less space in the frame. But something about the way they framed it didn't feel shallow.
They didn't want gloss.
They wanted grit. And I had plenty of that. The campaign shoot was surreal. They flew me to a studio in Brooklyn. A stylist handed me a coat with my own design stitched into the lining. I ran my hand along the fabric, tracing my old sketch, one I'd made on a bad night, when I thought nothing I created would matter. Now it was sewn into something someone might wear to feel powerful.
The shoot went well.
Then, days later, the real twist arrived. The brand's creative director called me personally. She told me the campaign would launch during Fashion Week. Huge exposure. Runway feature. Magazine spreads. And then she paused. Said there was one more thing. They had secured a follow-up billboard.
Times Square again.
Same location. But this time, it would be my face. I said nothing at first. My throat locked. I had worked so hard to be heard.
But being seen?
That still scared me. She told me I didn't have to say yes, that they could use just the art. But something inside me had shifted. I thought back to the girl who hid in her room, eating cold noodles, refreshing inboxes filled with rejection. That girl was still part of me. But she didn't lead anymore. I said yes. 2 weeks later, my face went up on a 10-story screen in the middle of the city. My eyes soft, but steady. My mouth unsmiling, but unafraid. Beside me, bold letters, unseen, unbroken. Art by Layla Amin. The next day, my mom showed up. She didn't text first. Didn't warn me. I opened my apartment door, and there she was, holding a plastic container of something that smelled like home. Lentil stew, I think. Her hands trembled slightly. She stepped in like someone expecting to be turned away. I didn't say anything. Just motioned for her to sit. We ate quietly, the clink of spoons the only sound for a while. Then, halfway through, she looked up. "You were on the cover of that magazine in the airport," she said, almost in disbelief. I bought 2 copies. I blinked, then nodded. They liked the coat design. She smiled. A real one. I liked the message more. Unbroken. That word. It's brave.
I didn't know what to say, so I didn't.
She looked around the room, at the framed drawings, the messy shelves, the tea kettle on the stove, and then back at me. "I didn't think you'd become this." She meant it as a compliment, but it still hurt, because I had always been this. She just hadn't looked closely. She stayed the weekend. We didn't talk about the past much. But one night, while folding blankets on the couch, she said, "I showed your video to Aunt Fariha."
She cried.
Said she wished she had told her daughter she was enough before it was too late. The silence between us shifted. Became less of a wall, more of a window. But peace didn't last forever. The real storm came a week later. I got an email from someone claiming my mother had been speaking at community centers about supporting your artistic children. She had even shown my early sketches, used phrases from my video, called herself the mother behind the message. At first, I was confused, then annoyed, then angry. I didn't care that she was proud. I cared that she was rewriting the story to erase her silence. I confronted her. Not yelling.
Just calm.
Controlled.
She didn't deny it.
Just said, I thought it might help others. I told her what it really did. It made me feel erased again. Like she only wanted to be part of my story now that it was palatable, praiseworthy, clean. She looked stunned. I didn't know it would hurt you. But it does, I said. Because you're using my healing as your redemption arc.
We didn't talk for a while after that.
I needed distance. Not to punish her, but to protect the part of me I had fought so hard to reclaim. I poured my feelings into new work. A series of faceless figures, standing on cracked glass, surrounded by people clapping but not listening. I called it applause doesn't heal. The gallery picked it up instantly. Said it was some of my best work. But even in success, the ache lingered. Then one night, another letter came. This one from my dad. He wrote about watching my mother grieve in private. About how she had stopped playing piano because it reminded her of the years she ignored my music. He didn't excuse her. But he said, she's trying, Layla. Not perfectly. Not loudly. But trying. Sometimes people only learn to say sorry in the wrong ways before they learn the right one. I sat with that letter for days. Folded and unfolded it like an answer I didn't know how to read. Then I called her. I didn't say much. Just said, you can be proud, but tell the full truth when you speak. She agreed. Months passed. Projects came. Interviews. Invitations. But through it all, I never stopped drawing. Never stopped telling the stories I needed when I was younger. About the girl who was called a failure. About the woman who found her face on a billboard and didn't flinch. And eventually I began teaching. At a youth center in the Bronx. Free art classes for kids who felt invisible. I told them what no one told me early enough. Your value isn't in who notices you. It's in what you create when no one's looking. One afternoon, a little girl handed me a crayon drawing. A figure with wires in her chest and a soft, glowing heart. I copied yours, she said, but I made it braver. I smiled. She didn't know how right she was. The community center had become my second home. The kids came every Saturday now, some with paper rolled under their arms, others dragging in cheap colored pencils like sacred tools. Most of them were quiet at first, like I had once been, shoulders tense, eyes scanning for approval. But something about the way we sat on the floor together, no grades, no expectations, just color and space and stories, softened them. One girl, Samira, barely spoke for the first month. Then one day, she handed me a charcoal sketch of a girl hugging a shadow. It's me, she whispered, but I made her stronger. I told her she already was. Words spread fast. Articles. Features. An online documentary crew even came to film a short piece called The Artist Who Taught Silence to Speak. It went viral in a strange, quiet way. Not explosive, but steady. And then one morning, an envelope slid under the center's door. Inside was a handwritten letter, stamped with the logo of the National Gallery in D.C. They were curating a new exhibition, a national showcase on emotional truth in modern art. They had selected 10 artists. I was one of them. My work would be displayed beside legends. My name, etched in a permanent catalog. Not a trending moment. A legacy. For a long time, I just stood there, holding the letter, the hum of the city outside barely registering. Then I walked over to the tiny shelf in the corner, pulled down the same sketchbook I had started with, and opened to the first page. The original drawing, the girl with wires instead of veins, still lived there, unretouched.
Raw.
It looked back at me like an old friend, like someone I had both buried and become. The exhibit launched 3 months later. My mom came, not as a speaker, not as a rebranded cheerleader,
Just as a guest.
She sat near the back, quietly taking in each piece. This time, I didn't watch her. I didn't look for her reaction. I looked at the girl beside her, Samira. I had invited her to be my guest of honor. She wore a second-hand dress and held my hand like it was a lifeline. Midway through the exhibit, a journalist asked me why I kept coming back to the same symbols in my work: chords, wires, the glowing heart. I told him the truth. That it came from feeling like my insides were built differently. That no one taught me how to feel without short-circuiting. That I used to think I was broken. But now I knew I had just been wired for honesty in a world afraid of it. He nodded, then asked if my mom had seen all my work now. I said, yes. But the most important piece she ever saw wasn't the art. It was me. That night, something shifted again. After the event, my mom and I walked down the street in silence. The DC air was thick, spring just starting to push through the cold. She didn't say anything for a while. Then, without looking at me, she said, "I've been thinking a lot about that day I called you a failure." I didn't respond. I let the moment stretch. She sighed. "I didn't mean it the way it came out."
"But you meant it," I said.
She nodded. "I did. Back then, I thought I was protecting you from a world that wouldn't be kind. I thought if I hardened you early, you'd survive better. And instead, I spent years surviving you." It wasn't said with venom, just truth. She flinched anyway. Then she said something I didn't expect. "Do you think you would have become this if I had believed in you from the start?" That question sat in my chest like a stone. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I know I wouldn't have had to bleed to prove I was alive." She closed her eyes for a second. "I don't deserve to be part of this version of your life." And maybe she didn't. But I had learned something in those galleries and classrooms and cramped apartments. Healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building something so rooted in truth, the lies couldn't survive next to it. "You don't need to be," I said gently. "But you can still witness it. That's enough." Later that week, I received another email. This time from a documentary producer. She had seen the online short and wanted to develop it into a full-length feature. Not just about my rise, but about the emotional inheritance women carry, especially daughters trying to build lives that look nothing like the ones they were handed. She asked if I would be willing to speak. I said yes, on one condition: that the documentary include my mom's silence. Not a villain edit. Not a redemption arc. Just the truth. She agreed. Filming began a few weeks later. My apartment became a half-lit set. My sketches were scanned. My students shared stories in whispered voices, some of them sitting where I once did, cross-legged, hoping someone would see them. And in the final act of the film, I told the whole story. From the job interviews to the cold stares, to the night my mother didn't say a word when I didn't show up to dinner.
To the billboard.
To the coat. To the crayon bracelet still tucked in a drawer, fragile but unbroken. The final scene was just me, in my classroom, sitting beside Samira as she painted a girl running barefoot through fire. "I don't think she's scared," Samira said. "I think she's free." When the film premiered, it made waves in ways I didn't expect. Teachers used it in classrooms. Survivors wrote to me. Critics called it devastating and redemptive. My mom watched it in private. She didn't speak much afterward. But I saw the change, not loud, not flashy. Just steadier hands, softer questions. A few months later, on my birthday, she mailed me a box. No card. Just two things. The first was the old thank you note I had written her in 3rd grade. "Thanks for making me grilled cheese and letting me stay up late when I'm sad." The second was a photo of my billboard in Times Square. On the back, she had written just 6 words. "I see you now. Every day." That night, I cried. Not from pain. From release. From knowing that even if the past had burned me, I had built something beautiful from the ashes. Now, when people ask me if I've forgiven her, I say this: forgiveness is not a door you walk through once. It's a hallway you return to, again and again, with softer steps. And when they ask if I'm proud of who I've become, I smile. Because I'm not just proud. I'm present. Not hidden behind someone else's shadow. Not erased from my own memory.
Seen. Named. Claimed.
Every Saturday, I still teach. I still draw. I still make tea late at night, and tape little sticky notes above my desk that say things like, "Let the silence speak," and "You are not made of scraps." I still visit Times Square once a year on the Billboard anniversary, not for the lights, but to stand exactly where I did that first time, look up, and whisper to the version of me that once stood there invisible, "You made it." And no one gets to unmake you.